Good day, all. Welcome you to the project based learning session of the 2 week online course on arts and skills for effective teaching asset. The resource persons, myself, Dr. Anita Juliet, and Dr. Jayalakshmi Menon, will be presenting you this session. Let us see the fundamentals of project based learning. Consider that a student has some question lingering in his mind. So, this question might be related to any real world problem or any need of the hour or any particular challenge. So, the solution that he has to give for this question will be based on project. So, the project based learning is an innovative way of learning in which the students will acquire content knowledge during the execution of the project and after the completion of the project. So, the learning process is said to be continuous. So, let us have a small glimpse about the fundamental differences between projects and project based learning. So, it is very evident that projects, there are possibilities that it can be done alone also, whereas project based learning can be done or it fundamentally requires collaboration and the guidance of the teacher. Projects concentrate only about the product, and the final thing about the project is the product that we get, whereas in the project based learning it is primarily concerned about the process and not about the product. So what do we learn through the process is what is concentrated in project based learning. Moreover, it is project is teacher directed. That is, students will be executing the project based on the directions of the department or the teacher, whereas project based learning is student directed because the problem has been posed by him. The way in which he has to arrive at a solution is also based upon student. Hence, it is completely student directed. Some of the projects can also lack real world context and it can be entirely theoretical too. Whereas project based learning is fundamentally relies on the real world experiences and problems and the solutions provided to those problems. A very important difference is the project that is being done conventionally is nothing but the process which is being done only after a particular concept has been learned, or after real learning what we achieve is called as project. Whereas in project based learning, during the process of the project itself learning occurs. We can see that all projects almost have the same goal, that is they will be acquiring or ending up at an end product, whereas project based learning, it is entirely the student choice to determine the outcome of project based learning is unique to each and every student, and it is based on upon the learning that he has got throughout the process. The core components of project based learning and the benefits are the authenticity and the relevance related to the real world problem, the content knowledge that has been gained through the project, inquiry based learning, the student's voice and control over the problem, collaborative learning, the way in which the employability skills of the students will be increased, the community partnership, that is a partnership among the students and with the teacher, or even sometimes with industries, the feedback based upon which the project can be revised and arrived at conclusions, and then the publicly presented product, and finally the most important one is the reflection gained through the implementation of the project. These are the fundamental or primary outcomes of a project based learning. In this, the students will be able to learn about project management. They can become more empathetic, they become system thinkers, they become hackers and rebels, they become explorers, and they make deep connections between ideas. They engage in iterative thinking, they are more engaged in learning. So the number of outcomes are diversified and are large. So depending upon the project, the outcomes will vary. Having learned about the fundamentals of project based learning, I would like to list out the learning outcomes of today's session. The participants will be able to design strategy for any project based learning, can practice a skill of learning through project and also develop multidisciplinary skills. Based on the discussion with my peer member and online resources, we have arrived at a very primitive and fundamental method of project-based learning. This flow diagram lists out the sequential steps that can be followed for any project-based learning, which can cross across any domain or any department. So the first step is the problem identification related to that particular scenario which arises in the mind of the student. This problem identification is closely related to the reasoning or practical relevance. It is very important to consider the practical relevance which will determine the feasibility of the project. Moving on, the third step will be to provide the possible solutions to that particular problem. The number of solutions can be many. It can be either technical or it can be non-technical. So during this step, a detailed analysis of the problem and all the ways in which solutions can be obtained will be explored in a very detailed manner. Finally, solution has to be arrived at least one solution has to be arrived. That solution has to be unique and it should also be feasible. After arriving at a unique solution, the next step will be nothing but the design and development of the prototype of the project. So here all the technical aspects related to the parameters involved in the design, the measurement methods, the softwares which have to be used, the hardware which have to be used, so all those technical in-depth details will be developed during the prototype. The next step will be the actual implementation of the project. So depending upon the problem statement, the implementation of the project can either be a real-time or it can be a simulation based, or in some cases it can also be based on a chart. So the implementation during the time of implementation, a lot of learning process will be happening, and because of the challenges posed during the implementation time, an iteration can happen back to the possible solution stage or during the development stage. So a lot of learning curve happens during this process of implementation and iterating back to possible solution and development of prototype. So after the project has been implemented, the effectiveness of the project should be definitely evaluated. So it will check whether the project had met the design parameters. So once the project has been evaluated, the last step is the most crucial and important step in project based learning flow. So in this reflections we will have to provide a complete detailed presentation of whatever knowledge that we have gained during the project has been done. It will be observed that during the execution of the project we might be involved in executing multidisciplinary tasks. So knowledge would have been gained in many different areas. So what all knowledge has been gained will be cumulatively obtained or reflected in this particular part. So this sequential diagram will be helpful in designing your project based learning. So I hand over the session on Dr. Jayalakshmi Menon, where she'll be taking up a problem and presenting a solution for the problem based on the design flow that we have given. Thank you.
Good morning, friends. I am Jayalakshmi. I am here to explain the implementation of project-based learning through a specific case study. Myself and Anita ma'am, we are from two different disciplines, and hence we thought that we'll incorporate an interdisciplinary work or project for explaining this project-based learning. So let me first explain you the scenario which we have chosen for our study. As you all know, irrigation is the backbone of Indian economy, and there are several problems associated with agriculture and irrigation. Kindly observe the picture which is there on your screen. What do you find? You can find that there is a main canal running through the center, right? And these are called as the control structures or the gates. So by controlling these structures, water will be diverted into the distributary canals. These are the distributary canals. Again, in the distributary canals, you will again have control structures. This will be controlling the water which is entering into the minor canals. Here you can now see the minor canals, and again from the minor canals to the field channels. This is the last point of diversion, and this mostly happens through pipe outlets. So through the field channels, farmers will be receiving the water to the field, actual field. Now, what are the problems associated? See, several researches have been conducted in this area, and studies conducted by the researchers all over the world shows that water availability is the primary concern to the farmers. So we have explained you the scenario. Now let us go to the problem identifications and its reasoning. So there was a survey which was conducted among the farmers, and the survey conducted among the farmers revealed the following problems. The first one is the non-equitable distribution of water. Second one is insufficient water supply, and the third one is water loss in channels. Now let me try to explain you what are the problems. First is non-equitable distribution of water. To explain this, let me go back to the previous image. Here you can see that the main canal. See, please understand that these main canals, the distributary canals, all these canals will be running to kilometers stretch. And see, the farmers who have the fields near the main canals or near the head reaches of the canal, see, these are the head reaches of the canal, which is the areas where the water is supplied initially. You call it as head reaches. And those which are in the middle, you call it as middle reach of the canal. And those farmers who receive water at the last, you call it as tail end farmers. Right? So generally what happens is the area of farms which is owned by a farmer varies, and the water distributed to the farmers should be equitably, or it should be in proportion with the area of the farms. But generally that does not happen, and most of the time it so happens that the tail end farmers are deprived of water. The second the second problem is insufficient water supply. Always, as we all know, we are living in Chennai, we are living in India, we know water is always deficient, and because of which there will not be a perfect match between demand and the supply. And the third one is water loss in the channels. See, when water is being flowing through the channels, there is water loss taking place through evaporation, through seepage, and all these processes. So what are the possible reasons for all these problems? The first reason is highlighted by the farmers is the unauthorized utilization of water, and the second is manual operation of control structures. So what do you mean by unauthorized utilization of water? Basically, the farmers will be authorized to take a specific amount of water. But then, since the control structures are being manually operated, these farmers will operate the sluice gates depending on their requirement, and it ends up finally in it finally ends up in water deficit to the tail end farmers. And the second, that is the main reason for the problems. Now, how do we overcome these problems? So what are the possible solutions? The first solution is forming water users association to control and monitor water usage. See, generally it so happens that when PWD people are insisting certain procedures which are to be followed, farmers will be reluctant. But when we give the responsibility to the farmers itself by forming associations among themselves, they get a better control of the water usage, and they will also be able to monitor the water usage in a better way. And Another method, more accurate method, includes providing technical solution by means of advanced technology. And this is where we are looking at how to provide technical solution by means of advanced technology. Why technology? See, this image shows you the conventional method of operating control structures. See, this is the control structure or the sluice gate, and a person is manually operating the sluice gate. Now, when he raises the sluice gate, water will be flowing through the channels. And what happens is, it so happens that these farmers will come and operate the gates as and when they require, and they will be diverting the water to their fields. Now, advanced automatic gates. How does this happen? I'll show you a small clipping. How the gate is automatically passes the exact discharge required to the downstream side. So for the prototype development, the parameters we have to identify for the operation of control structures, and the parameters deciding the quantity of water which is flowing downstream through the control structures are upstream water level, downstream water level, and the height of gate opening. See how technology can be utilized for the operation of control structures through automated gates. See this is a schematic diagram. See, this is the direction in which the canal is flowing. Here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 control structures. So these are the control structures. I hope you can clearly identify the line. These are the control structures. This is just a schematic sketch. Here you have installed sensors both at the upstream side and the downstream side. So as water is flowing in this direction, this is the upstream of the control structure, this is the downstream end of the control structure. So this water level, this is the upstream end, this is the downstream water level. For this gate, this is the upstream water level, this is the downstream water level. So this continues, right? So all these, the water level sensors will collect the data, and these data will be sent to the central observation control unit, which can be remotely located. These maybe the central location unit will be already having the water supply schedule, the water supply constraints, and what is the water requirement, what is the water demand, and also the water delivery schedule. So based on this and the data collected by the local control, here the process takes place, and then the required, this will be controlled, the control structures will be controlled by the central control unit to pass the required amount of water downstream of the canal. So if you're trying to put the same thing in words, the first and foremost important is we have to accurately measure the water level, and for accurate measurement of water level you have to use water level sensors. There are a number of water level sensors which are available in market today. We have to choose the correct water level sensor. Second is transmission of the data to the central control location, that is done using SCADA. Then the processing of data takes place in the remote control system. Then setting up of the control structure opening to the optimum value based on the control system output. So from here the process takes place, and the output is sent back to the local controller, and there the actuators will be actuated to the desired position, which means the gate or the control structure will be adjusted to the desired position. So this project has been implemented in the laboratory setup. This is a radial gate. See, the gates can be radial or vertical. It depends on the availability, right? In most of the practical conditions, you find that radial gates are better for canal automation studies. So this is just a diagram of the project, actual project implementation. So, see, once the project is implemented, the student will be able to give us a reflection of what they have learned. Now, through this project which we have done, the students will be able to get a detailed study of the sensors. They'll be able to identify what are the sensors available and then to correctly point out which type of sensor are they going to use. Second is analysis of the SCADA systems, basically to get a knowledge of the SCADA system. Third is the study of controllers. Like, as you all know, there are different type of controllers available like proportional, integral, PI, proportional, integral, PID, proportional, integral, derivative, and the recent one is the predictive controllers, in which model predictive controller is the most commonly used. And the study of actuators is studies of the control structures, and also they can obtain an insight into multidisciplinary project management, how you can attain or you can make use of problem based learning in multidisciplinary project. So this gives you an insight on the topic which we have chosen and an idea of how we have to how we have to introduce project based learning for an interdisciplinary project, right? Now Anita ma'am will tell you more about assessment and the rubric pattern.
Hello all. Let us move on to the typical assessment that will be generally followed for a project-based learning. There you'll be asked to identify a problem of your choice under your field of expertise. You need to identify the unique and feasible solution for the problem. You need to implement the solution either as a model or an experimented output or depict the same through the chart. However, this is an assessment which in general will be done for a PBL which will extend to weeks or even to months. However, since in our asset program we have a very limited time, we are not expecting you to do this type of assessment. Owing to the time factor needed to implement a project-based learning, we request you to please take up the assessment which is MCQ based. It will be posted under the assignment for project-based learning. We thank you all for the opportunity for giving us a session to share our idea about project-based learning. Thank you all.